Hi everyone and welcome along to Sonic Academy. My name is Chris Agnelli. Today we're joined in the studio with a very special guest. This guy's currently on tour in Ireland and we practically kidnapped him from his hotel room and brought him up here. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Audien. How you doing, man? How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. You've landed in Ireland. This is your first time over here. How do you feel about it?
I actually love it so far. When I was landing, it's very green. I think that's the best way to put it.
And very wet?
Very wet. Currently, yeah. A lot of rain, but so far, so good. Reminds me a little bit of the UK, but, you know, in a good way. I think it's really cozy.
Cozy. You're on tour, you're doing several dates across the country, and you've also a special date this weekend. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, this weekend, going to Amsterdam to do State of Trance 650.
Okay.
So, should be really cool. You know, I've been to Amsterdam once, so going again is going to be really cool. I actually loved it the first time, so.
Would this be one of the biggest shows you've done, or have you done bigger? What's your biggest show to date?
I'd have to say Tomorrowland was one of the bigger ones, but there are those random huge ones that just in the U.S. that just happen. You know, these random paint parties or something. They bring out 5,000, 6,000 people. But I expect this one to be definitely one of the biggest ones because it's just a huge show. I think there's going to be thousands and thousands, probably tens of thousands of people. So.
And it's broadcast live on radio as well, so does that give you added pressure?
It's more like fun, you know.
Okay.
It makes it. I like thinking that what I'm playing is being broadcasted because I like to do my best, and when I do something really cool up there, I'll know like not only the people in front of me heard that, but everyone else who's listening. So.
What do you use DJ-wise? Are you CDJs? Are you Tractor? What's?
Yeah, I'm all CDJs and flash drives. I keep it really simple, you know. I don't use the laptop stuff yet.
Okay.
Maybe I'll try it eventually, but.
So you're on the Nexus and you just bring in your pen drives, drop them in, and play away. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Cool. Let's go back 2008. You've got an apartment in a very small seaside town in between New York and Boston.
Yep.
It sounds idyllic. You start producing. Was there a particular record that sort of just sparked your interest and just went, this is what I want to do with my life?
I can't put a particular one, but I can say that, ironically, what got me into this music the most was listening to Armin's radio show, State of Trance. That's actually how I started listening to this music and getting really interested in it. The next part was me trying to find out how to make it, because it would like perplex me how it sounded, and I was like, are those real instruments? You know. And then I figured it out and downloaded FL Studio and tried that out, and yeah, it's been 6 years of just working on music constantly. So. And
was it big amongst your friends, the State of Trance radio show? So it started. You know, I toured America probably early 2000s, late 2005, and it was still very much an underground scene. You had the odd few big parties, but it has just gone absolutely mad. What do you think changed?
Well, I had like a little close-knit group of friends that we hung out with. We hung out with each other a lot, and we listened to the radio show. And yeah, I think back then, between all the people I hung out with, it was really cool that I started making the music because, like, when I started getting a little better, it's like making some of those sounds that we heard and wondered what it was, like making them, it was like, oh, it's that, it's cool. So, like, the whole process was just listening to the show and then basically finding my favorite tracks and kind of mimicking them until I could do something unique. But,
there's no particular one track that sort of stood out and you thought, that is the pinnacle of production, I want to sound like this track or this guy, or was it just a bunch of sort of trance?
It was a bunch, you know, but it wasn't just trance, honestly. That's kind of what makes it my sound now, is that I'm not really a trance producer. I'm more of like right in between trance and progressive house, even a little more towards progressive house these days. But I'd say like just having influence from all sorts of different genres, you're gonna take all the parts you like from each and just kind of make your own, and then all of a sudden you have a unique sound, you know.
Listening back through your catalogue, you know, the early stuff on Enhanced, you know, it's got that very progressive sound. Once we get into Anjuna beatsy stuff, it becomes much more focused as a production. was that a conscious decision to become much more focused in melodies and chords? I mean, you're obviously Wayfarer is just this phenomenal monster of a production, and
Thank you.
you know, going from the enhanced, which was kind of, you could hear that it was in and around that area, but Wayfarer just stands out. What do you think changed?
Well, when I was doing enhanced stuff, that was my sort of like, that was my period of kind of finding my sound and the stuff that I like the most. And so I was trying all sorts of weird kind of mellow, melancholic stuff then. And then when one of my biggest goals at that point was to get a track signed with Anjuna Beats, because I was a huge Anjuna Beats fan, Above and Beyond fan. And so Wayfarer, actually it wasn't Wayfarer as the first one. I did another EP called Eventide. And so basically after that, I started trying to make stuff that sounded like it would fit the label, but also different and something a little more unique. So Wayfarer, I think, was the perfect rendition of that. And that was me basically congealing to the label, but also getting better with production as well. I had then switched to Logic about a year prior to that, and that changed everything for me, switching to Logic.
So you're one of these producers that moved from Fruity Loops or FL Studio to Logic.
Yeah.
Was that a difficult transition? I did back in '99. I moved from Cubase to Logic, and it screwed me for about a year.
Yeah.
Did you find it an easy transition?
Yeah, it was pretty easy, honestly. Like once you just figure out all the, you know, how to use everything in Logic, all the built-in stuff, it's really just snapping everything to a grid. I mean, I find that it's the same with Fruity Loops than it is with Logic. However, FL was more of like a pattern kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Logic's more like what I like most about Logic is it's more just like you're putting the audio onto a grid and then you just go and edit that audio. You don't have to like go into patterns and go into piano. It's just like, to me it was just not right. I mean, a lot of people love it, but the newest FL is more grid based.
Okay.
So now it's like I probably would have stayed with FL, but Logic also looks a lot better to me. Like I have to like what I look to like what I hear. I mean, it's a weird, maybe OCD kind of thing. Like if it looks good to me, it'll probably sound good.
And how do you think Logic Pro 10 looks? I know you don't have it, but
I don't have it yet. I'm seeing it now and it looks really good. So I'm definitely gonna get it. But 9 to me looked really clean and like
10 has become a bit chunkier and a bit, but it's
darker.
Darker. When you first see it, it's a bit of a shock, and then you live with it for a week or two, and you go back to 9, you kind of go, "Geez, 9 doesn't look good."
Yeah.
So you open up a Logic project. What is the first thing you do? Do you bring in drums? Do you?
If I'm starting a new track?
Absolutely new track, blank page.
First thing I do is put in a sidechain trigger.
Right.
That's the first thing, and then I set the output to nothing. Use it as a ghost trigger, because that's basically what you're working into, I think. And then I first start with a kick drum.
What do you use as a trigger? Is it a kick drum? It's bussed over to a bus? And
It's a tap, a little tap. And I think the tap is made with Logic's built-in plugin. Is it Klopfgeist?
Klopfgeist, yes, which is the metronome.
Yeah. And it's a nice punchy little tap.
Okay.
I don't think you want your sidechain trigger to be big. You want it to be the short, really like not loud, but just a short kind of like punchy transient.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
That'll give you more room to work with. That way you can work the release and stuff like that with sidechaining. But big kick, it gives you no room. You need to have a lot of room there.
And then you've got the ghost kick in. Is it drums next? Samples, loops? What's your go-to?
Well,
do you Ultra Beat? Do you use AX-S24? What's battery? What?
I don't use any of the built-in Logic stuff almost ever. I mean, I just use like the EQs.
Yeah.
The delays, some of the reverb, but I start with the drums usually, and I have like to me, I've probably made like 5 tracks with the same kick drum, just changing little stuff, because I feel like if you have a really good kick drum, it's like don't change that. That's the one thing that should stay constant. It's just like if you have a really good kick drum though, if you know that the kick drum's good, use it. But try to use different claps and hi-hats and stuff. That's what I try to do, building drums first. Sometimes I start with melodies and stuff. I always use chords in my tracks. It's just like there's never been a track I made without chord progression, so I start with that sometimes.
Are you a player? Do you sit at a keyboard? Are you a mouse programmer?
I'm a mouse programmer.
That-
I mean, I
that's-
do random chords.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I'll hear little, I don't know the word, but little, just going from one chord to another, I'll
Yeah.
say, okay, that's
Sequence,
good.
just in inversion of the sequence. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Uh, so what do you use to program your beats then? Is it Ultra Beats or what is it?
The beats I do all on the grid,
So you drop audio files onto the grid.
onto the grid. I don't
And-
use Ultrabeat or anything like that.
Do you bounce things down then or render them out or? No?
It depends. You know, like sometimes I'll glue some of the drums
Okay.
if they're just like little, like if they're just random and
So
splattered on
would
there.
you program sampled hats then on the grid on the main arrange area?
Yes. Like I'll put in loops sometimes and
Yeah.
pull hi-hats out of loops,
Okay.
and then even sometimes I don't even glue.
Right,
So
yeah.
my projects can tend to look pretty messy, which leads me to another thing.
Right.
I bounce, like when I'm about halfway to 3/4 the way done with the track,
Yeah.
I bounce what I have down to stems, and then I
Yeah.
start again with the
Okay.
stems.
Right.
The reason I do that is because I hate looking at a project file with a ton of stuff in it. It just
Yeah.
kind of like
Freaks you out a little
freaks
bit.
me
doesn't it?
out, and there's more to make sure everything's going right. And
Well,
with stems, it's there.
I
you
would
know,
just be worried about moving a hat by accident and having to try and find
That-
it amongst, and
which
also
I've done,
yeah.
and it's the worst. So.
your stuff is very melodic. Is that where your basis of every track comes from? Is it melody, the chord sequence? Is that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the main thing for me. I think if a track's not like sounding good melodically, it's
Mhm.
just not sounding good. So it's
So what do you look for to find these melodies? What's
Um,
is it a lead sound? Is it a pad? Is it a
sometimes it's a lead sound. I mean, I usually will use a familiar sound that I've used before to make the melody, and then I'll change the sound after that.
Okay.
Because I don't like to use the same exact sounds every time, because it's just kind of like people expect that.
Uh-huh.
You got to do something unexpected. But yeah, it's just about like using familiar stuff, getting a good melody, and then going in and changing it. You know, doing layers and stuff.
Now we get into the nitty gritty.
Mm-hmm.
What's your go-to synth? What's the big? I can't live without this synth.
Lately it's been Nexus 2 I've been really into, but obviously I've used a ton of Silent 1.
Yeah.
Trying to step away from Silent 1 a little bit because it's just like everyone's using it,
Yeah,
and it's getting harder and harder to make it sound unique. So
Okay.
if you can find cool chords and like lead sounds from Nexus, say, or like even other plugins, you know, Anna's a good one from you guys and stuff like that. It's like if you can find unique sounding chords and lead sounds from that, use that
Yeah.
any day of the week. Even if it's not as full or chunky sounding as Silent,
Mhm.
sometimes it's just better. You know what I mean?
It is a bit more unique. What was used for the paths of Wayfarer? What's that big solid?
That's a lot of layers, honestly. It's like, first of all, there's some Silent in there for
Yeah.
sure. That's one of the main. And remember, it's not about the synth at all. It's about how you process it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a few secrets of how to process a Silent, say like a detuned Silent pad.
Yeah.
There are ways to process that with plugins that will make it sound nothing like Silent, and
Okay.
that's how you get it sounding really different. That's how you get it sounding unique. But I'd layer it with like kind of more wobbly stuff that's not just very like straight. I like to layer it with stuff that maybe wobbles more and more as the sound goes on. I think that LFO. You know.
Yeah.
So I use a little bit of massive and stuff. I think there's probably 8 layers in there.
Okay, so you reckon there's 8 synths going on in that one pad,
Mhm.
and there's a secret recipe to processing those pads.
Yeah.
Are you prepared to reveal some trade secrets?
There's a few I can.
Okay.
You know, there are some.
Because
Let me think.
the guys here at Sonic, we studied your pads for, a few days, and we tried to work out what was they doing, because they're so solid, and we had tape saturations and stuff going on over the top to try and, because we noticed it was like from, I think 6 or 7K, there was no top end, but it still sounded bright, and yeah.
So-
are we hinting at something there?
Well, actually, you got to cut. In my opinion, when you're using Silent and stuff, cut the highs on it,
Mm-hmm.
and don't use Silent's built-in highs, because when you're using detuned saws and then you have the highs that come from that, they're
Yeah,
usually not that clean sounding. If you can layer a different white noise on top of that,
Uh-huh.
then it'll be a lot more consistent and clean sounding in the high department.
Okay.
That way, you can have, you know, you can have the nice cleanness of the mids and bottoms of those chords,
Okay.
but have like like a different white noise that won't clash with it, say.
Mhm.
So maybe I'll use ES2 for the white noise.
Okay.
Kind of put a little release. You got to set the envelopes the same on all of them, no matter what, so they sound like one big synth.
Okay.
But for processing, a lot of EQ. That's obviously it. But there's some Waves plugins that will really make it sound wicked cool. Like there's Maserati, which is what I've used on the Wayfarer chords, one of the
Okay.
main leads of the chord, and that's what gives it an interesting like loudness that you just can't get from just keeping the chord in there. It kind of removes some of the mid lows, but
Okay.
it gives it this like nice rich high end. So you got to fill those mid lows with something else.
And how do you know to try? Like I've sort of looked at Maserati, and it looks like something for guitarists.
Yeah. Oh,
so I
yeah.
kind of maybe
Exactly.
ignored it. You know, how do you know? Is it just random trying things out, or?
Yeah, completely random.
Okay.
The reason I used it is because for the reason of it being for guitarists.
Okay.
You know, guitars are really aggressive and they make a statement, and I wanted those lead chords to make a statement and be aggressive. So putting aggressive plugins on there will make it sound aggressive. So
And the main sort of saw, that's from Silent, is it? Just as, you know,
yeah.
a few voices detuned slightly and
Yep.
brilliant. What about the one area I was kind of interested in? What about the bass? Because I noticed it's not a real subby bass. It's kind of this upper mid bass that sits with the pads and gives you this solid wall of sound. We did an interview with Meyer Levy a few weeks ago, and it was the same questions to him. It's like, you know, this I love this sort of wall sound. Wayfarer is my track of the year last year.
Oh, thanks.
I think, you know, it's something. As soon as I heard it, was just, it's got that something special. So what did you use in the bottom end?
So for the bass, actually, it's about 3 different layers for the bass.
Okay.
So there's a lot of layering going on, which I found is not even as good, by the way. You know, you wanted to use as little of layers as you can,
Yeah.
but kind of making them sound like there's a lot of layers. So for the bass, it was, I think, massive, and it's just really simple detuned saw
Right.
with some of the massives built-in white noise.
Yeah.
But the bottom end is actually, I think for Wayfarer it was either, what is it? The built-in Logic synth. Is it ESP?
Right.
It's actually a more
It's got the waveforms on sliders. Is that the one?
it's a more complex synth from Logic. It's like a
Sculpture.
no
There's ES2 is the big sort of
ES2.
ES2.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it was an ES2 because I had a preset in there, and that's
Okay.
why. But more recently, I've been using Trillion for subs. They're really deep and they're really analog. They're actually analog because
Yeah.
they're sampled from analog.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the sub, but then layering that mid bass on top gives it like a really full bass.
I've seen photographs of your studio, particularly with
Yeah, whatever it is.
particularly with your feet up. I mean, it looks like a very simplistic setup. You know, is it you don't have lots of outboard gear or
None, yeah.
not, so it's all in the box.
All in the box, yeah.
And what do you use for monitoring?
Well, actually, I never use my speakers
Right.
because I just like, first of all, I'm moving to a new apartment soon, and basically, I know I'm definitely not gonna be able to use them then. But in the house that I'm living, I live with my brother. We split a house,
Okay.
and basically, I had all the freedom to use speakers, and that was half the reason I moved there because I wanted to use speakers, and I
Yeah.
know he wouldn't care. So I never used them as I was there. I mean, I use them very occasionally to check the low end. I'll go stand in the corner of my room. That way I can hear what's going on. I'll compare to other tracks. But the speakers I use are Dynaudio BM5As.
Okay.
Kind of small, but they're good. They got a lot of boomy sub chill.
We've got the big brothers
They're
sitting
big.
here.
Those are the big ones.
In fact, the bottom end of these guys scare the life out of me. It's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
Leaving the track, leaving you and stuff. Great vocals. How do you approach?
Ooh, there was a
vocals?
lot on those vocals.
Yeah. No,
Actually, the vocals he sent me were actually really clean as it is.
Uh-huh.
They were like really, there wasn't that much I had to do, But
Who's the singer, by the way?
Michael S.
Michael S,
He's a
okay.
singer out of Chicago.
Okay.
But what I did do on those particular vocals was I did a little waves compression, so I think CL2A maybe?
Yeah.
I did a little of that because it's very easy. Like there's a few knobs, and it just
out.
gets it sounding like up front, but not too up front. So that's what I liked about that. Got rid of some low end. I did a little EQing. Like I went in. A lot of people use plugins to do certain things like this, but I went in and did automation to duck out certain like hisses and stuff like that. I didn't use a de-esser on that one, which I started using later on more recent vocals. But what else? I sidechained it to the kick, the vocal.
You sidechained the vocal?
To the kick, yeah, a little bit. Not even a noticeable amount. It's just that little bit will get it flowing with the groove of the song. I think that's important. What else?
But what is the actual? But how do you approach? Do you hand somebody a backing track and get them to write vocals like most producers do? And
it happens different.
Or do you give them an idea? Do you think this is what do you sing something guide wise or what's the process?
Well, actually, the track started out done as an instrumental and a remix of somebody else. And for some reason, that didn't work out. So I received the vocal from Armada, sent me that vocal, and I loved the vocal. They actually sent me a demo, and I just thought the vocal was really good. So I took the vocal. I was originally going to make a track around it, a whole new track. And then I thought, wait, I have this track that's a remix. And one thing that everyone should know about when I remix is when I remix, it's like a whole different song. I mean, I don't use that many elements from the original, just the vocal sometimes. That's what happened here. So I had a very original track, which was very bare bones. And then I put the vocal on. They happened to be in the same key and BPM. It was like, wow, this is really meant to be. But then I started working more on it, became a whole different track.
Yeah.
And then the key to this track was the radio edit, where Michael S. was really like a big part of that. We did a lot of Skyping, and we went through it part by part and made this radio edit that sounds completely different from the original mix.
Right.
So it's more piano driven, the parts are more defined, and I think the radio edit's even better than the original mix in that case.
And do you think that led you to the remixes for, say, like Justin, Armin's big track with Guthrie and stuff? Do you think because of that radio edit that people thought you've got a slightly more pop sensibilities than most producers? Is that?
Well, maybe. I think that maybe for the Armin one did. I think the Justin one, actually, that's funny. I did that like ages ago, and that was something weird. I wanted to try something more dubsteppy for that.
Yeah.
I did one for Christina Aguilera that was more like electro based. Whenever I do remixes, pop remixes, it's fewer and fewer these days. I just did the Bastille remix.
Yeah.
I tried to do something like different than my normal style, because I think that when doing pop remixes, you have like a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
So
it's something, definitely listening to your catalogue of work, it's hard to pin you down. It really, there's the Wayfarer stuff, then there's Sup, which is, got a real more edgy urban feel to it. There's the dubstep remix of Justin Bieber. Do you love the creative freedom? You don't? I mean, a lot of producers, I find that, Paul Van Dyk does Paul Van Dyk trance. Armin does Armin, and I would find that very restrictive. I'd be more like, I fancy doing a dubstep track today. Let's just do it.
I'm just not afraid to branch out. I think that it's good to try all sorts of different styles of music, because I think that every style of music is good for its own reason. And I listen to a lot of drum and bass, so I probably will make a drum and bass track in the next couple months. I have a feeling that maybe I'll want to just try it. But maybe even deep house or something, maybe trappy, like something melodic trappy I'm thinking about doing. But I just don't think there's any boundaries. I don't think people should have like, allegiance to all these genres and stuff. I think that everyone should listen to all sorts of genres.
Do you think like you have three main labels that you kind of? Am I correct in saying that you're like Anjuna Beat, Zook, and now Spinning? Is that a new? Do you fancy doing them all in the same, name as Audien, or do you fancy changing your name, or?
All is the same name.
Yeah.
Because it is me, and it's just like, I want my sound to be melodic. I want there to be a signature sound in there, which it always is. I try to keep something the same about all of those tracks.
Yeah.
But I want it to be known that I'll make a track that is completely unexpected. I want to be just, doing all sorts of stuff. I want my style to be the lack of style.
Mm-hmm.
So
how does it work contractually with Angina Beats? Are they cool with you going off and doing something for spinning, or does it cause problems?
No, I mean, I've just never kind of I haven't locked myself down into a label quite yet, but I have really good relationships with all the labels I work with. I think that it's less seen as I'm just kind of going around and doing whatever. It's more like I'll make a track and it'll sound more like it would fit on that label. If I make a track with more pads and kind of melodic stuff, I'll be like, oh, that's an Anjuna track for sure. But I made this track called Elysium, which was more of a big room kind of kick with a plucky sound sort of thing. I wanted to try that out in my own way, and so I thought definitely spinning. So.
Can we ask you about Elysium in that has the DJing that you've obviously your DJing dates have gone through the roof. Has that influenced the sound of that track? As you've been out and seen crowd reaction and thought, do you know what, I'm going to do something a bit more banging, a bit more.
Yeah, playing more and stuff, it really influenced how I make music because now I know what really works on the dance floors. And a lot of the time, it's not the melodic stuff that sounds really good on the dance floors. My melodic stuff does though, because maybe it's just because it's my own tracks and people know them, but the way I do the melodic music is I try to have the same energy as something with that big kick, because that has a lot of energy. So if you can get that, then that's I think key. So I think playing out.
I think with Iris and stuff and those types of tracks, there's a lot of space in them. It's as we talked about before, it's laser focused. It's that dan.
Yeah.
Your earlier enhanced stuff there's lots going on, and in the club that can sometimes get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's why those tracks work. It's real big riff hammered home, but it's musical and it's progressive.
It's simple. I think having simplicity is so key. I did this remix for Bruno Mars.
Yeah.
And it really is just a bass line, a kick drum, and a snare. That is the entire chorus of the track. And because of that, it sounds amazing in the club. Because when you have all these layers and all these different sounds going on, not only do they start clashing, but it's hard for that to translate on huge speakers. You have something simple, or just maybe just a kick and a snare. You listen to Sound of the Underground, Nicky Romero and Sonny James Ryan, and it's just that you have a snare and a kick drum and maybe a sub bass, and that sounds amazing live. So look at that, it's a good example.
But they're always the hardest tracks to make. Less is more is always. I kitchen sink things. Come back to sort of your projects. What's your go-to synths? Are Silent, Massive, Nexus. What are your go-to plugins? Is there a master plugin that you use? Do you use Ozone, or how do you approach? Do you not master tracks? Are you a fan? Are you part of the loudness? I've asked you about 14 questions there. That's what is your favorite plugin
for mastering? I'd have to say more recently I've been using a newer plugin called the Invisible Limiter, and it's by this
AOM.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's actually I think it's the best limiter you can actually have right now, in my opinion. I think it's amazing. It limits, but you can still go very loud with it, and that's why it's called the Invisible Limiter. Yeah. But it's amazing. I love it. I've been using it a lot.
Bizarrely, Mario Levy said the same, and Ilan Bluestone had said
I got
the
the idea from him.
And I contacted AOM in Japan, and the guys kindly sent us a copy, and it is that invisible limiter. You cannot hear it, but everything just sits, and it's a real nice plugin.
You can push it a little too hard. You get that whole invisible mentality feel. You gotta kind of remember it's not true. It just gets a little more than others.
Yeah.
You could still push it way too hard, and you'll hear but just you can still get it so loud with that. It's all about your mix down, really. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's not loud, it's your mix down. It's not the limiter. Yeah. It's something. There's too much of something. you just gotta really check it out with analyzers and stuff.
Do you bus everything? Do you bus all drums,
Sometimes.
all bass, all pads? Are you kind of clinical in your mix downs or what? Or are you kind of like, I would be kind of messy and go,
Very clinical.
You're very clinical?
Well, when I bounce all the stuff down to stems, that's kind of like my version of bussing, because with those stems, I process the stems.
Okay.
So I'll do all my pads in one stem,
Mm-hmm.
kick drum stem, hi-hat stem, clap stem, snare stem. It's like all the drums, maybe like when I start a new project file,
Mm-hmm.
and the stem file, which is like when I put all the stems in, I continue working from there. So the stem file ends up looking like a project file
Okay.
with 100 channels, where I bounced it down to 5 channels for the stem file, or 10. So there's a lot of work that goes into the tracks. It's visually like insane.
And so it's just a ton of plugins, is it, or are you kind of economical in what you do, or?
Well, it's that, and it's like I'm cloning the stems sometimes, and like doing certain effects on little parts of the stem. Like I'll say I have a piano and I want like this 2 seconds of the piano to have a Sound Toys Phase Mistress on it or something. Mm-hmm. I'll clone it, copy it down, just that little chunk with Phase Mistress, instead of like doing dry and wet and stuff.
Automating stuff. So
yeah.
You chop the audio out, bring it onto a new channel, and then do you continually rebounce stuff out? Do you constantly? No. Once you've got
stem file's usually where it ends.
Yeah. Okay.
But at least then I know that the main stuff, because I'll only start making the stems like 3/4 the way through the track.
Uh-huh.
I'll at least know the main stuff that's it. It's audio. You can't screw up. Audio can't drop out or anything, which happens to me occasionally, which is a CPU thing, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's better better visually for me. It's easier.
And what sort of EQing and stuff? What EQs do you use?
I use Logic's built-in one all the time.
Yeah.
It's not amazing, to be honest, and I've heard that it's not amazing. There are better EQs. I use FabFilter's ProQ a lot.
Yeah. I think you're doing well with the Logic's one.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of something in there, little artifacts. Sometimes the artifacts sound good, though. It's weird.
And how are you hearing these artifacts if you're not using monitors? What?
Headphones. And that's how you really hear the artifacts.
And what headphones are you using?
Sennheiser HD 600.
600?
650s are, I think, the same. So.
Yeah.
They're amazing headphones. I've gotten used to them.
They're the only headphones. Phil here has got a set, and he lent them to me. And the first time I've ever taken headphones off and listened in the speaker, went, that's exactly the same. Normally you take headphones off and go, what the hell's that?
Yeah, but they're open ear.
Yeah, they're real. They really are. If you can afford them, they're pricey. What, $300?
Yeah, worth every single penny. So. And
do you worry about the hearing? With DJing and listening on monitors or in headphones. Does that?
When I DJ, I use earplugs. I use the custom earplugs with the filters. So those are great. But when producing, I try to take breaks.
Right.
My ears get very, very fatigued.
How long does it take you to produce a track?
It could be anywhere from like a day to 2 weeks. It just depends on. Usually, if it's a really long time, it's not a good sign, because I'm overproducing. I overproduce like all the time.
So yeah.
Like I'll have a great idea, and then like later on, it'll just start to sound bad, and I'm like, I had a great idea. Why didn't I just keep it? If you have a great idea in the beginning, just keep that and then move on to other stuff.
Do you think that printing the stems is kind of that, we used to call
Commitment.
it committing to tape, and
Exactly.
that was, you're parking it, you're going, that's it, that's...
You're committing to it. Exactly.
I think that's a big key lesson for young up-and-coming producers, is that, you have so much stuff available to you nowadays. Trying to commit to an idea is very, very hard.
It's hard, and it's like you just feel like, oh, there's probably something better out there. But like 90% of the time, you'll look for something better, and you won't find it, and you'll settle with something worse. You know what I mean? So it's just like, use what sounded good in the beginning of the session there, that drove you to do other stuff. Mm-hmm. Use that idea with those sounds. As long as it's not a billion sounds that you've used before, then try different sounds. But
and just lastly, just quickly onto your DJing. You're doing a lot of DJing at the moment. You're touring the world. How are you finding that and trying to get sort of studio time? Are you producing in hotel rooms, and is that affecting things, or?
No, a little bit. I mean, I produce the best when I'm at home for like 4 days or something, and I have that time.
Mm-hmm.
But I do a lot of work in hotel rooms, obviously, and yeah, I mean, I work a lot on my laptop and stuff, so it's just easy to do it on the road. But I've been liking working on my desktop, which I just got recently. So that's really been my biggest addiction lately. So
Cool. Well, guys, that's the end of the interview for today. I just want to thank Audien so much, Nate, for coming in and chatting to us. It's been a real fascinating insight into your world of your productions, and thanks for revealing some secrets.
of course.
We will talk off air, and I'll try and get some more secrets and maybe show you guys later on. That's it for today, and I hope you all got something from it, and we'll see you all very, very soon.